Hello there. So, anxiety. A lot of us feel it, and I've been dealing with it for a couple of years now. And one of the big aspects of life that it has affected me in would be dealing with clients as a photographer. Now, I want to focus on the part where it's often at its worst for me, and I feel like a lot of you guys share this feeling, which is it is at its worst when we are talking to prospects who might or might not be our clients in the future. So, the initial client conversation. So, that's what I want to focus on. And the my intent with the video is to make the whole uh, conversation with prospects a little bit more of a pleasant experience for yourself and the prospect that you're talking to. And so before we move any further, we've all felt anxiety, but if we are defining it, the dictionary definition of it is worrying about a certain outcome of any given circumstance. So in this case, the anxiety comes from worrying about whether you're impressing the client, whether you're coming off as a professional, or whether you're getting the job or not. So these are all outcomes that you might or might not want from the call, right? And it could be very different for you, but these are like the common ones and ones that I've felt myself, where if a client is calling me, those are the outcomes, or those are the ideal outcomes that I'd want from that call. When I'm so focused on the outcome of the call, or like how the call is going to end up, how the client is going to end up perceiving me, how the client if is the client impressed with me or not, is the client going to give me the job, what do they think of me. So when you are focused on those things, you are like focusing on things that are like entirely out of your control. Like they might be impressed with you, they might not be, they might give you the job, they might not, or they might see you as a professional, they might not. And no matter what you do, some people are just going to respond negatively to all three of those questions, right? And when you're like basing your confidence, or when you're like focusing on those paths, you're focusing on paths that you cannot possibly be certain about. And again, I'm going to do another dictionary definition, which is of confidence, because it's often related to anxiety here, right? Because the opposite of feeling anxious is kind of feeling confident. Not the opposite, but that's the desired part. We don't want anxiety, we want confidence. So the dictionary definition of confidence is a feeling of certainty over a certain domain or just about yourself. So oftentimes when you are really good at your craft, for me it's food photography, it might be portraits, or even it might not even be photography for you. So whatever domain that you're working on, the more you do it, the better at it you get, right? In terms of how good at you are at your craft, and you become more confident by doing it over and over again, and by doing different things in the same domain, you just feel more confident about your craft. But just doing that is not going to make you more confident with speaking to clients, because this one just involves you and a craft, but speaking to clients involves like another person in the mix, and a person that you cannot control. Photography is something you can control. Like if you're doing it wrong, you can do something different and get a different outcome. And but with when you're dealing with people, that's not the quite the same thing, right? So when you're focused on outcomes in this situation, where about impressing the client, about getting the job, about coming off as a professional, about showing off all your knowledge and all that stuff, and it is at the end of the day to make sure that you you have like a good reputation with the person, and also whether you're getting the job or not. And as a business, if you're running a business, those are the things that you actually want, because those are good things for your business. Getting proposals and having like a good reputation with the client, all those are good things. But in the initial conversation, when you're so focused on that, you kind of leave the client's requirements out of it, because you're so focused on impressing them, you're so focused on getting the job, that you don't really ask about what the client actually wants. So what has actually helped me feel a little bit less anxious, or just managing my anxiety a lot, has been a shift of where I'm focusing to get my confidence. Because you don't feel confident about your work every day. You might have your feelings might on it might change, and no matter what you've done before, like your accomplishments, like you might have done like hundreds of shoots before. It's no guarantee that you won't feel anxious when the next new client calls you. and that has been the case for me. I've probably spoken to hundreds of clients. You'd think at this point I'd feel just like entirely confident about whatever clients it works in, but that's not true because it changes. How I'm feeling about my work kind of changes every day, and I'm sure as like a fellow like creative entrepreneur or whoever is watching, I think you feel the same way. Like you don't always feel 100% about your work every day, right? But that doesn't change whether it's good or bad, or whether it's how it's perceived and stuff. But you don't personally feel as confident every day. It's not like a constant. So when you're basing your confidence on things that you don't really control, whether you have an impressive portfolio, whether you've done hundreds of shoots before, or whether you're like the client is impressed or not, if you base your confidence on that, you are kind of never going to be confident. It's kind of like building like a house on quicksand. You don't know when it's going to collapse, right? um, so what I did instead is, instead of focusing on things that are like entirely out of my control, I focus on something that I can control, which is shifting my focus from the outcome of the call, like the client conversation, to my intent with the call. Now, what do I mean by intent? It's not the intent to get the job. What I mean by that here is, the my intent is not to get the job, but to assess whether the client is a good fit for me or not, by asking them questions, like whether they have the budget for me, whether I can do what they actually want me to do, and whether we have the right timeline for it. So those are all like some things that we assess to see if the client is good for you or not. And so I focus on things like that. And my ultimate focus of the call is to see if I can help the client in any way. So if you can shift your mindset from trying to get the job to trying to actually help the client, it kind of changes everything about the way that you approach the call. Now, it does not mean that it takes away all of your anxiety, because anxiety is kind of like a bit of an unconscious response. Like you don't control that. If you could control that, you just like turn it off, right? But that's not how it works, and we all know that. Now, what it has done for me is not get rid of anxiety, but it has managed my anxiety a lot. For example, when I went in with the intent of just helping a client, it was, I'll give you an example. This was like a client I really wanted to work with, and it was like a big client. I've been like trying to like work with them for a while, and they decided to call me. So it was like a big deal for me. So when they did call me, I was naturally feeling like quite anxious about it. But my intent was to actually see if I can help them or not. So even though I was feeling anxious, I actually messed up the call in a lot of ways by my definition, which is like I stuttered a lot. I said a lot of the wrong things. I didn't say enough of the right things, and I didn't ask all the questions that I wanted to ask them. But still, the client, I did end up getting the job. Now, uh, by the book, if I am going by the book of asking the right questions, saying the right things, all the techniques that you've come across to build confidence, I did none of those things correctly, and I technically should not have gotten the job. Now, that might have messed me up in different ways, but the outcome is that I got the job in spite of me messing up a lot of things. And that was purely based on just the intent that I went in with. Because when your intent is to help someone, the kind of questions that you ask and the way that you approach the conversation is entirely different from when you're just trying to get something from them, which is their money, the project that they have, or just the reputation of just working with them. So when you're focused on those things, you don't ask all the right questions, and your tone, and people can really like tell like what your intent is just from the way that you talk to them. Especially like successful businesses, they've dealt with a lot of people, so they know when they're dealing with someone who just wants something from them, right? And you don't want to be that person. And it's always, if you're being a professional about something, you're always focused on identifying and fixing like problems, right? Like offering a solution to a problem that they are suffering with. And when you are like approaching something professionally, you're focused on identifying the problem and like solving it. You're not focused on like whether the client is impressed with you or not, whether what the client thinks of you, and whether you are actually getting the job or not. Those are not things that you think about. You are like focused on identifying what the problem is, and clients can really tell from what your intentions are from those things. And so this is not really about technique of asking making them think that you're a professional. That's not the point of this exercise. The point of the exercise is to like shift the way that you approach the client calls entirely. Now, like I said, the first time that you do it, it's not going to feel quite right. It's gonna feel very weird if you've never done this before. But just shifting the focus is gonna make you feel a lot more calm about the whole process because you're not invested in a certain outcome. You're not worried as much about whether you're getting the job, whether the client is impressed, how the client is thinking of you. You're focused on, can I solve the problem or not? And that's really the only question that matters. And all those other things will fall into place if you get the right answers to those questions. And that question, a single question. So now that is like a big idea sort of thing. And I also want to give you something a bit more practical, especially for the first time if you've never done this before. Like a very practical thing that has helped me quite a lot and helped me a lot with feeling a little bit less anxious is scheduling the call at a time where I can take the call in like a place that I'm feeling safe in, where I'm in a very familiar place. For me, it's my desk, and I feel my most comfortable taking client calls when I'm at my desk and I have them on speaker, and I know for a fact that they can hear me clearly, and I know for a fact that I can hear them clearly. And I also like forget a lot of things that I'm like talking about. Like I might remember them during the conversation, but after the conversation ends I kind of forget them. So I'd like to take notes as I'm taking calls. So when I'm in a position to take notes, I do that, and I feel my most comfortable doing that. And just knowing that I can take notes and I'm not forgetting anything that we do during the call just helps me feel a lot less anxious. And I know that I'm just minimizing the mess ups. I know that I'll probably mess up at some points, and those that are probably out of my control in those situations, and I'm like entirely okay with that because I'm doing everything in my power to make sure that it doesn't go wrong. At the same time, I'm not obsessing over the small minor details even if I do mess up, because my I know that my intention is to help a client at the end of the day, and I know that I'm going to do my best. And if your intentions are good, I think that would also be the best practice for you. So with that, I will leave you with that. And just like so the big idea behind this video again is, just to reiterate once more as to conclude it, is to you want to shift the way that you get your confidence from the outcomes of your circumstance, from your intentions to the circumstance, which it might be client calls, it might be like a problem you run into in a project. But that is kind of the approach that has helped me feel a lot less anxious and a lot more confident. If you have different ways in which that you deal with your anxiety, or to feel confident before client calls or during client calls, please let me know in the comments, or you can DM them to me. I'd be happy to have a conversation about it. With that, I'm gonna end this video. So thank you for watching. I'll see you guys later. Bye.